Welcome back. Well, hundreds of Australians are desperate to flee the Middle East this morning as Iran and Israel launch devastating missile attacks. It comes as more than 250 are killed in Iran and 24 in Israel in the escalating crisis. Joining us to discuss today's headlines New South Wales Liberal Senator Dave Sharma and Tasmanian Greens Senator David Shoebridge. Good to see you both this morning.
New South Wales Greens.
Oh, New South Wales.
Yep.
Both of you.
Yeah.
Good to have you both in the
Long
studio
schlep
with
this
me.
morning up to the studio.
All right, Dave, I want to start with you because you are obviously Australia's ambassador to Israel. When you look at the conflict that's happening now, obviously what we've seen as well in the past 18 months has been devastating. What do you think the end game is here?
I think the end game for Israel is an Iran that can no longer threaten it with annihilation. And this is a country that has been hell-bent on their destruction for at least the last 2 decades, that's ideologically committed to wiping out Israel, that has supported armed terrorist groups in the region, Hezbollah, Hamas, the Houthis in Yemen to that end, and has sowed an immense amount of chaos and destruction in the region.
How likely are they to have success?
I think
achieving that.
Look, I think they are already having success, and they will have success in significantly setting back Iran's nuclear enrichment program, their weaponisation program, and their ballistic missile program. So the main elements which have an ability to threaten the destruction of another state are being targeted, and I think they're being significantly degraded.
David, we know that the US President Donald Trump is hopeful or believes that there'll be a deal between Iran and Israel. I mean, he's the man who talks about deals all the time, right? Is one likely when it comes to these two warring nations?
Well, you hope some kind of arrangement can happen rapidly, and the world has an obligation to try and make it happen to de-escalate. But of course, you know, Donald Trump his administration was meant to be having a meeting with Iran, which was derailed by yet another escalation by Netanyahu. And we're seeing just this morning yet more escalation by Israel, issuing the same kind of warnings to evacuate parts of Tehran that Israel has been issuing to evacuate parts of Gaza. Yet another escalation from Netanyahu. And this can, of course, only happen with the United States' green light. I mean, the United States says it's not involved in this, but these are US weapons, it's US diplomatic support, almost certainly US intelligence and US targeting that is being relied upon by Israel in yet another escalation. So what Donald Trump says and what his administration does, I think, are quite distinct. And, you know, I think many people wake up in the morning, they open their phone, they have a look at these news, and they're deeply, deeply unsettled, increasingly scared by what seems a never-ending escalation by Israel.
I guess the point that David makes is right. You know, the US is involved here, but not necessarily the one actually dropping the bombs per se. At what point will that likely happen? I mean, we know that Donald Trump has so far vetoed a direct hit on the Supreme Leader in Iran. That's something Benjamin Netanyahu is after, though.
Well, reportedly, I mean, I'm not sure we can, you know, how much seriousness we take that. But I would say that, look, Donald Trump said, I want to embark upon a diplomatic process with Iran. He did. He said, I'll give that 2 months to work. He gave it 2 months. 2 months expired last Friday. I don't think we should be surprised that the failure of diplomacy has led to conflict. It often does.
I guess, Dave, the tragic part about all of this is the lives lost, right? The civilians who have been caught in this, and not just the recent deaths that we've seen, but 55,000 who've been killed in Gaza in the past 18 months, as well as the atrocities we saw on October 7. And it's just so heartbreaking to watch on from this. We're now seeing Australians who are stuck over there. There are some 650 wanting to get out. How urgent is repatriation right now? How much more should the government be doing to try and get Aussies home? Well,
it's absolutely urgent. And of course, from Israel and Iran, there are hundreds of Australians in Iran. And I said earlier, this warning has been issued to an entire neighbourhoods in Tehran that the need to evacuate Australians from both Iran and Israel is really urgent. And in all of this, sometimes we talk about Donald Trump and we talk about Netanyahu, we talk about Anthony Albanese. But the people we should be most concerned about are the ordinary Iranian on the street, someone trying to live in Tel Aviv, that person in Gaza who's living in their third tent, worried about the next bomb that's going to fall. You know, I would love to see more concern about the people on the street in these countries, because they're the ones who are dying.
No, absolutely.
And they're the ones the world has an obligation to try and protect.
Yeah, I think we'll all agree on that, that's for sure. Well, Anthony Albanese is preparing to meet Donald Trump tomorrow when he'll reportedly put Australia's critical minerals on the negotiating table. Dave, is the PM just playing straight to Trump's hands here, especially with AUKUS at stake?
No, I don't think so. I think the Prime Minister has an opportunity to, one, convince Donald Trump of the value of AUKUS, not only to Australia but to the United States as well, and our joint endeavours in the Indo-Pacific, but two, convince him that we are an important and valued trading partner that brings unique assets to bear, including critical minerals. And for that reason, we should be exempt from punitive tariffs that the US is imposing elsewhere. But that's the test here. Can Albanese convince Trump of both of those things?
David, there's a bit on that he was going to talk to Trump about, that's for sure. But it's also interesting about what role Australia plays, right? You don't want to be too subservient, obviously, but you do want to talk about this. And I saw an interesting piece in the SMH yesterday which poses the question, at what point does the US not become a desirable ally anymore?
Well, at the point that it's led by someone like Donald Trump, with an administration that seems to be sending the military against its own people, threatening Canada, threatening Greenland, trying to break up NATO, seems to be a very erratic and dangerous ally. And one of my real
But it's one that we need, isn't it, especially in our region?
Well, this idea that we need the US to save us, or we need some great and powerful friend to save us, is something that I would hope more Australian leaders challenge. Like, we live in one of the most...
But how else do we protect ourselves?
Well, we live in one of the most politically secure parts of the world, in a very unfashionable corner of Oceania, with huge amounts of ocean and archipelago to protect ourselves. The idea that we need the US military here to protect ourselves is something we should be challenging. And one of my concerns is what we've seen with AUKUS is far from the US protecting us. The US is... The arrangement with AUKUS is designed to enmesh us in a war with China. Not our war with China, but the United States' war with China. We don't want a war with China, but Donald Trump and his administration seem to be shaping up for that. So my concern is, you know, Anthony Albanese will go and meet Trump, offer him yet more tribute, maybe some of our critical minerals. We don't need to offer tribute. In many ways, Donald Trump might save us from AUKUS.
Well, we'll see how it plays out. There is a lot on the table, that's for sure, and I guess defending ourselves is going to be prime focus. Thank you both so much for coming in today. Really appreciate it.
Cheers.
The Today Show team is standing by with all of your news headlines.